Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jadley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are beaming out to the entire planet from the beautiful, historical, book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. We're so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, CastBox, Amazon Music, Audible, Player FM, YouTube. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Really wonderful show for you today, kicking off Asian American Pacific Islander Month. First up, Angie Kang returns to the show with Julie Leung, celebrating their book, Navigating Night. It's a beautiful conversation. I can't wait for you to hear it. Later in the show, we travel out to Australia to speak to Amelia Tonta about her new picture book, Neil, the Amazing Sea Cucumber. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Fart Boy and Reeky Dog, Dino Doom. Fantastic new graphic novel written by New York Times bestselling author Joan Holub, who's written over 200 amazing books for kids. It's school sleepover at the museum. What could go wrong? Well, how about this? A snack-fueled explosion of garbanzo beans and peanuts unleashes a stink so powerful it brings the dinosaurs back to life. Now, Fart Boy, Reeky Dog, and their friends are in the middle of a dino-sized disaster. They have to solve tricky riddles, find missing bones, and stop the stinkiest villain of all, Professor Gravy Pants. Because if they don't, the dinosaurs could take over. Or worse, they could become Dino Dinner. This action-packed graphic novel is bursting with friendships, adventure, and enough laughs to shake the museum walls. If your kids love superheroes, if they love dinosaurs, and if they love to laugh until they can't breathe, then Fart Boy and Reeky Dog Dino Doom is the book for you. Because sometimes the power to save the world comes from the unlikeliest place. Grab your copy today and get ready for a reading adventure that's truly dynamite. My friends, I am so excited. This is going to be a wonderful, wonderful conversation. We are here with the author and illustrator of a brand new picture book. It's called Navigating Night. First, joining us from Connecticut, the author, Julie Leung. Julie, how are you?
Hi, everyone. So thanks so much for having me.
Delighted to have you on. And then joining us from L.A., she's returning to the show. Her interview was named one of the best of 2025. Please welcome back the illustrator, Angie Kang. Angie, how are you?
Hi, Jed. So happy to be back. Thanks for talking.
Great. You are welcome. Julie, let's start with you. Navigating Night. What's this story all about?
Oh my gosh. The story is about memories of me going on Chinese food deliveries with my dad in the 1990s. So this was before we had handheld cell phones and the internet was just in our fingertips. And my parents and I ran a sort of hole-in-the-wall Chinese buffet in rural Georgia. And after my dad has sort of filled the buffet tables, we would do nightly food deliveries with, a usual cast of like typical families that would order. And so when I wanted to write picture books, a lot of my subjects tend to be sort of Chinese American luminaries, like people who have done incredible things like I.M. Pei, the architect, Cecilia Chang, who's the restaurateur who opened up the Mandarin and introduced a lot of Northern Chinese cuisine. So I've written about a lot of historical figures, and Navigating Night was a departure, but a very similar piece of storytelling in that I kind of wanted to illuminate my experience of kind of growing up in a very unique way as compared to my peers. Yeah. So that's what the story is in a nutshell. But I think it's not only part memoir, but it's also sort of a homage to my dad and all that he did to immigrate here, all that he accomplished to adapt to a new country. It's also maybe a window into the food service industry and like thinking about all of the people whose invisible stories and voices make the food, make sure the food show up at your doorstep on time. It's all of that rolled up in a book.
Yeah. Well, your dad may not have been well known, but I consider him a luminary in the way he cared for you and your mom.
Yeah, it's great. One of my favorite memories of this whole publication process, not only working with Angie, which is a huge part of how this book even came to be as special as it is, was I actually got to give it to my dad earlier this year, and it was very moving because as you can always, I love showing off the books that I get to publish. This is I think my 6th picture book. But I've never really written about the family, or our experiences. And so it was a really special moment.
Yeah, I bet your dad must have been so proud to hold your book in his hands.
I think so. It's hard to read him. He's not he's not a very, even I said in the book, he is a very observant person, but not necessarily a talkative person.
Angie, what did you think the first time you took a look at the manuscript?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I was really emotional the first time I read Julie's words. I immediately thought of my own father and our relationship. I'm very close to him, and he drove me around everywhere. And so I remember so many of our kind of formative conversations happening when we were sitting in the front of the car together, both facing forward. And then I just felt like there were so many layers to unpack. There was that, of course, at the face of it. And though I don't share Julie's background working in a restaurant or growing up in Georgia, I also remember having to kind of help my parents out when it came to the English language, proofreading their emails, looking over things, and helping out with vocabulary, things like that, things that I think I was definitely ashamed of or felt annoyed by when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And what I really loved in this text is that it treats it with respect, but it doesn't expect it to be resolved within 32 pages or 40 pages or anything. It feels like just the beginning of a conversation. And I immediately knew I wanted to illustrate it. I was just please give it to me.
So how does that work? Does the art director send the manuscript out to 4 or 5 different illustrators and then gauges how enthusiastic the illustrator is about the project?
I can start off, and then I can pass over to Angie on the second half of the process. Usually what happens is after you've sold a manuscript to an editor, and you've gone through a few rounds of edits, it's the perfect as possible by word and text alone. Usually the editor then starts working with the art director to kind of find a few portfolios. And so Angie's website, I think there were maybe 4 or 5 to pick from. And so they sort of sent the list of artists to me. And at the end of the day, it's the publisher, it's the editor, I think maybe the art director. I don't know who gets final say, but it's usually not the author, but most editors are nice enough to let the author feel like they had, a say in the illustrator. And I think Angie's work stood out to me immediately. You were always the front runner, Angie. And I think there was this particular comic that really moved me. It was about, I think, your family's own experience of the Cultural Revolution. And Jed, if you're not super familiar with what the Cultural Revolution was, this was sort of during Chairman Mao Zedong's like regime in the 1960s through the late 70s, which was a super tumultuous time in Chinese history, and it was a lot of upheaval in terms of society and cultural norms. Everything was upended. It was a pretty tough time for anyone who might have been in positions of like intellectual jobs or government jobs. A lot of them were sort of like, persecuted, for upholding old ways of life. And so my family got wrapped up in that a lot. I think Angie's family did. And so in just, reading that comic, I kind of just knew like you would understand more than anyone, what I was trying to, say with my story.
Yeah, I was floored when I heard that for the first time, because on my end, all I get is just a manuscript and then do you want to do it or do you not want? And of course, I wanted to do it. But I then emailed Julie after with a bit of a fan mail because I'd been familiar with her work before. And she mentioned this comic, or I mentioned this comic being like, actually, I have a personal connection to your text. And she was like, I know. And I thought that was really special because that comic was the first time I'd ever properly talked to my mom about the Cultural Revolution and this really hard history, and the first time she had really opened up to me. So it felt like we were both able to connect with our own families and tell these kind of really heavy stories that maybe, at least on my end, I hadn't heard until I was an adult, and able to kind of access that. And I also wanted to mention that the first time I shared Navigating Night with my parents, they wept at the text. They were so touched by it. And sometimes they'll send me videos of them reading it out loud before they go to sleep these days.
Oh my gosh.
I'm their only child, so they miss me, I think.
That was the other thing we had discovered. Angie and I are both only children, which again is just, more layers of poeticism to our already awesome partnership.
Yeah. Well, I love that both of you spent so much time with your dads in cars. And as I was telling you both before we hit record, I had the unique experience of spending so much time with my daughter, whether it was driving her to dance 5 nights a week or taking her out on the road with me. And I used to say this, my daughter, she's 16 years old. She's beautiful. She has loads and loads of friends, really, really talented. And she's choosing to get in a van with me for 3 weeks and travel around the country. And those conversations are so cool. Sometimes they're really heavy. Sometimes they're silly. I was always amazed when we would just be sitting silently driving for a half an hour, 45 minutes, and no one's angry at each other. No one's, it's just, we don't have anything, and we're very comfortable being together.
Yeah, that was something I really valued with my father, is I was so tired as a teenager, and sitting in his car, I was allowed to just be myself and just to be without performing or putting on a face or having to tell a story about my day. And he was always so okay with that. And Julie, it sounds like maybe that was similar since your father was more quiet too.
Yeah, no, it's very similar. And I think that's kind of what was so, sometimes I feel a little indulgent that like this particular book is so specific to my experience. So, me just kind of processing my own childhood hangups in a very uncharitable way. That's one way to describe the book. But then what I love coming out of this publication is like people have come to me and they've found such different entry points, right? Those who, you don't, like Angie said, like you don't necessarily need to have been, grown up in a Chinese restaurant, but you understand the experience of sitting in a car with your parent, and having stories exchanged, coming to an understanding. Like we're not all sort of like sunk into our phones and our individual podcasts, but like long car drives are a moment to sort of just be in the moment silently, or maybe potentially opening up your inner selves to each other. So I've heard a lot of those kinds of stories coming through like school events and, other people who've read the book sharing it with me. So I think that's really, an unexpected like piece of, I think, the publication. Cause I assumed, again, like this is like it's just a story about me. And I feel crazy that anyone even wanted to put art to it or put this out on a bookshelf anywhere. But I'm really glad what's come of it.
Well, I love the fact that books can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And obviously, from the reaction that you've been getting, Julie, and from Angie's reaction, this is absolutely a mirror for lots of kids, both Chinese and from other ethnicities. But it's also a window. And I love the fact, not so much, it's great that kids are going to be able to look at this book and look through the window to learn a little bit about Chinese culture, but just learn about the immigrant story. Learn the fact that people have risked their lives to be here and made tremendous sacrifices to be here. And then once they're here, not necessarily greeted with the open arms that we always read about. There's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of payback. And I'm hoping that this can help kids develop a little bit of empathy for the people in their classrooms whose family might be experiencing the same things.
Thank you so much for saying that. It's so funny that you say the word windows, because that's actually a literal, figurative, thing that Angie put into the picture book. Because, one of the things that I highlight a lot in the book is sort of this isolation feeling that I had growing up where, I'm driving around what feels like everyone else's normal lives. Everyone else got to get off the school bus and go straight into their own home, do homework in their own homes, watch TV, get dinner prepared. Whereas I was sort of during those normal hours driving around with my dad. We always had later meals than everybody else. So our lunchtime was 3:00 because we had to make sure we worked through the lunch hour before we ate for ourselves. Likewise, I wouldn't have dinner until 9:00, 9:30 sometimes. And to this day, I am a late eater. That just kind of stuck with me. And it's sort of, to your point, there's so much adaptation that is asked of someone new to this country, of needing to figure out how you fit into this larger fabric. And I don't know that everyone often thinks how brave and how adaptable, to even do that as an individual is. One of the choices I had made is that there are lines of Chinese in the book where I don't provide pronunciation guides. I don't even do character to character translations. But I wanted to leave the Chinese on the page by itself, just to sort of emulate that experience of imagine if you were in a country where none of the words made any sense to you, and the only way for you to get around is to kind of feel your way in the dark. And so that's what also Navigating Night is kind of another metaphor of what it's like to have an immigrant experience, is you are kind of trying to find your own way in a space that you don't have context clues. You don't have sort of the typical language and communication that you have become accustomed to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Angie, I'm curious, what was your first, again, I told you the last time that you were here that I thought the art in our lake was like art that I would see in a museum. And the same with Navigating Night. How would you describe your style in these books?
Oh, that's a great question, because I feel like I shifted at least a lot in my own eyes, maybe not as much from the outside looking in, but I was trying some new techniques. Something that I used a lot in this book was salt, table salt, that I would put onto wet gouache, and it would kind of soak up all the water and leave these spots that kind of were reminiscent of rain. And I did that a lot because when I was reading the script, I was wondering how properly to externalize these feelings of discomfort and annoyance and frustration that the little girl was feeling. And I thought maybe if she's already driving around at night, but maybe if it's raining outside, she extra doesn't want to be outside. Mm-hmm. And that became my own entry point into the art, and kind of started to inform not only how the characters are dressed, what everyone else was doing, but also how the landscapes looked, how the light reflected off the ground. And then eventually as I was developing the sketches, I started thinking of it as this narrative device where the storm is the greatest when the girl and her father are kind of at odds with each other, and she's really frustrated with him. And then as they start to have these conversations, bit by bit, the rain dies down. And then after her father tells her this very pivotal line, which I learned from Julie was a real thing that her father said to her. I might be misquoting it, but I think it was something like, before I had you, I would get so lost.
You got it.
I've
word for word
reflected on it so much. Then the moon actually comes out and the clouds part. And so I found that to be a really interesting way to add another layer of it in the art that maybe isn't referenced in the text, but really just emphasizes or underlines the points that Julie has already put into the story. So stylistically, a lot of that came out of my desire for texture and then eventually became like a story element. But I do think it's funny that both this book and Our Lake, the through line is water.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've learned so much doing this podcast. It's only taken me 8 years, but you know, and I've had the chance to talk to creatives about their process. And, you know, I've talked a lot to illustrators, and, you know, I was kind of blown away to realize that, you know, the illustrator's telling half the story. And so I got that. But I got to tell you, Angie, this is the first time that someone has actually taken me through, like, oh, I decided to do this because the story was saying this, and I did that. And the fact that you were using salt, I mean, my mind is blown here. That's just...
I really appreciate that. The salt is something I learned in high school thanks to my art professor, or art teacher, Mr. Smith. So shout out to Mr. Smith for that.
There you go. And is that with watercolors that you were doing it?
I was doing it with gouache, but you can do it with watercolors as well. Anything that's a water-based medium.
Now, you were doing it with what?
With gouache. It's kind of like watercolor, but it's more opaque.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it gouache, the Q-W-A, or wash?
It's gouache with a G. So it's G-O-A. Sorry, you're making me spell this.
No, that's okay.
U-A-C-H-E. Sorry. I can't spell that well on the fly.
That's all right. That's all right. You can create masterpieces. Don't worry about being able to spell. But I'm asking because my beautiful wife, since she's retired, is studying watercolor, and so I'm doing this. I'm talking to great artists. I may get some hints for her.
Yeah, I think it's a really fun thing to do. I think once art starts to feel like play, there's a lot of energy on the page, which hopefully reflects in the final piece itself. Mm-hmm. But I do think that when you're kind of figuring out a medium and you haven't quote unquote mastered anything yet, that's when things look the most exciting, at least for me. So yeah, I hope that she has fun with it. Maybe she can play salt.
We'll send you whatever she makes with it. Or
I would love that.
Or I'll let you know if she said, I'm not doing that.
That's definitely one of the most exciting facts to tell, like, a group of, like, kindergarten to second graders. Cause when I say crayons and gouache, they don't know, but like crayons, they're like, oh, I draw with crayon. And like, if anything, like, they are in the midst of a lot of like texture art creation. So the idea of like sprinkling salt to do it, like, they're like, yeah, I totally like understand like how you might achieve that effect. So it's definitely, especially with the younger kids, like when they hear about your process, Angie, they're just like so excited.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. I mean, I do feel like a kid. I'm just getting as messy as possible in my studio and then having to mop it up afterwards.
There you go. Julie, what about your creative process? Did this all come out at once? Were you kind of struggling do I really want to tell this story about me and my dad?
You know, it was one of it's easy and hard at the same time. So most of my previous picture books are very research driven. I usually pick a person. I do, a big round of reading everything I can about it, documentaries, reaching out to the family. I love to do interviews with anyone. And so then I sort of have a timeline of someone's life and then I start sort of thinking about ways to pull like the most important pieces. I think about the message that I want someone to take away from at the end of the story. So there's kind of a formula to creating a picture book biography. When it comes to a story like this, I had a very specific image in my head of night. Like, I never said a word about rain. That was all Angie's magic. But I had this feeling of, about like, and this would have been like 2023 maybe that I started writing. One of the images I had in my head was not only like, sitting next to my dad, trying to figure out where to turn next, but, because my grandfather had also had to flee China, like his hometown in China, to Hong Kong because of the persecution. I was also thinking he had to leave, from it was like this little village in Guangzhou. You had to leave by night by bicycle, and then you had to get on the riverboat, and you just basically had to sneak yourself across to Hong Kong, which was a British controlled territory at the time. Because, the environment during the Cultural Revolution was just very intense. Neighbors were watching neighbors. Like, if you were like caught with books you shouldn't have, or like if you said something bad to another, something bad meaning like, did you criticize, or say something wrong, someone might, rat you out to, the Red Guard, which was this like paramilitary group formed by a bunch of students. It was a really bad time, bad time. So my grandfather had to literally not tell anybody, jump a bicycle, with a backpack by night to try to get to our cousins of some sort who were living in Hong Kong at the time. So originally the story was pretty long. It was like my grandfather's experience, later on by my dad's experience, later on by my own experience. And I just kind of vomited it all out. And I think maybe it was 3,000, 4,000 words at the time. I had sent it to my agent. And so this is one of my favorite advice to give to anyone who wants their work represented in the world. Find yourself a good literary agent, someone who's gonna read your work. And Wendy Gu, who is my literary agent, she came back, was like, you've done a lot here, this is beautiful, I think there's something here. But she had me sort of strip it down to its essence. And she kind of focused it on me, not necessarily this three generations of navigation that I wanted to layer on. So I ended up keeping maybe a third, the piece that was just about me. And then, layering just really my father's experience of coming to New York. So there's all this hidden story that never made it, not even to Anne, our editor's desk. But the creative process was so interesting because a lot of it was, putting out what was already in my heart and mind, but then having a second reader kind of come back and try to find the true center of the story. And that was probably the most significant change that came out of the writing process. Because after it went to the editor, it was just really line edits by then.
Folks who are listening didn't see Angie's expression when Julie was talking about her grandfather, jumping on a bike at night. Really, that's a really terrifying story. I'm wondering, because I think it's fascinating, and I think that story deserves to be told too.
Maybe one day. I don't know what to write next sometimes. I think about, I've done, there's another picture book biography. I've done two that are coming out in 2027 and 2028. What people don't really realize is just how long it takes, between writing something to when it becomes a picture book. The artist needs a lot of time to pull together. I don't know how many illustrations, 50 illustrations, Angie?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, just a lot of pieces of art. So at minimum 2 years, from, even going on a fast, cadence. I happen to work in book publishing for my day job as well. So not only do you have to have the text ready, have the art ready, but then usually you need time for the editor to talk about the book, with like their sales division, their marketing department, their education department. And so there is just so much effort. Every book in your hand has like not only just the creators, but like so many people have touched it. Production, inventory, like book publishing is it is a small but mighty industry, with lots and lots of helping hands.
Well, I don't know if it's small. I attended the International Children's Book Festival in Bologna, Italy a couple years ago.
Oh, Angie, didn't you just go?
Just there, yeah.
You were just there. Okay. Isn't that amazing?
Like 30,000 people, I have to say. I didn't know there were so many people.
No kids. That's the thing.
No
People
kids.
like, no, kids aren't allowed. And when the year I was there, it filled 5 different huge convention halls.
Same.
Yeah.
That's maybe what it looked like now. Yeah, there was just bodies on top of bodies and and art off of every single wall. So much inspiration.
And I don't know. So I was walking through with my beautiful wife. She came one day and I had been there the day before by myself, and I was just walking. I'm like going, that's an illustrator. That's an illustrator. And my wife's like, were they on the podcast? I go, nope. There's just a look in their eye. There's something. There's like a starry, hopeful kind of look.
The aura of artistry just exudes from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Julie, you said you didn't know what you're going to write next, but you do have a couple of books coming out. So you have an open invitation to come back and celebrate those books.
Oh my gosh.
Whenever they come. I do think your grandfather's story, it deserves to be told. Maybe middle grade novel. Who knows? Angie, what's up? What's next for you?
I actually just finished final art for my next book that I'm writing and illustrating. And it's called My Grandma the Stranger. It's coming out next spring. And it's about, this girl who her grandma remembers her, but she doesn't remember her grandma because, when we're little or when a lot of time passes, sometimes people remember us when we don't remember them. And so to her grandma is just a stranger. And so it's kind of about what it looks like to reintroduce yourself to people and meet them in their past versions, their current versions, and their future selves. So, yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, well, again, open invitation. You are welcome to come back anytime. I'd love to talk to you about that book. So, yes. So, back in 2020, is this 26, 27. So I look forward to both of you. And if you don't, I'll be on the phone. Anyways, before we go, Julie, tell us where we can go to find out more about Navigating Night and find out more about all the books that you've created.
Oh my gosh. If you want a full list of everything I've written, probably my website, which is jleungbooks.com. So JLEUNG books.com. But Navigating Night is available wherever books are sold. Love supporting local indies if you can. But yeah, that's where you can find that book.
Angie, how about you? Where can we go to see more of your artwork and see your books?
Yeah, my website is just angiekang.net. So ANGIEKANG.net.
Excellent. We've had a really fun time speaking to the author and illustrator of Navigating Night, brand new picture book from our guests, Julie Leung and Angie Kang. My friends, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you, Jed.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad my mic worked.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Atmosphere Press. Have you been dreaming about publishing a children's book, one that sparks imagination, creates bedtime memories, and maybe even becomes part of a family's story for years to come? The truth is, great ideas deserve more than a file sitting on your laptop. They deserve to become real books, beautifully designed, professionally published, and ready to reach young readers everywhere. At Atmosphere Press, you get expert guidance through every step of the journey, from editing and illustration to design, distribution, and marketing. So your book doesn't just get published, it gets positioned for success. Whether it's your first picture book, a middle grade adventure, or the story you've been carrying for years, now's the time to bring it to life. Visit atmospherepress.com to send in your manuscript and see what your book could become. That's atmospherepress.com, where your book can go above and beyond even your wildest dreams. Join us right now from Canberra in Australia. Our guest is here today to celebrate her brand new picture book. Is called Neil, the Amazing Sea Cucumber. Please welcome to the show, Amelia Tonta. Amelia, how are you?
I'm great, thanks, Jed. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm delighted. It's really exciting to have you on. I love speaking to somebody who's in the future.
I am in the future by about a day, isn't it, Jed? I think
there you go. Yeah. So
yesterday was great. You'll be in for a good one.
Excellent. I'm looking. Amelia? I woke up this morning. Here it is, April 7th, and it was snowing here in Boston. Snowing in April in Boston, just outrageous. But we're going to make the best of it.
It's nice here. I've got the 8th of April because I am in the future.
There you go.
And that's how it works around the world. And it's a nice day here in Canberra. The sun is shining. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll get some of that sunshine tomorrow. Tell us about Neil. What makes him so amazing?
Well, Neil, he's a bit of a special sea cucumber. He thinks he's a bit boring, but he's a really nice guy, and he just misses his friend Sandra. I think maybe that's why he's so down and kind of dull and boring. But it's up to you to decide. Is he really boring, or was he just sad about losing his friend Sandra?
You know, somebody who's sad about losing a friend, that's the kind of guy I want to hang out with.
Yeah, he's a sweet guy. And yeah, he's just sitting around on the bottom of the ocean floor. Nothing much happens to him. He doesn't have like a face really, or arms or legs. And so, compares himself to the rest of the beautiful sea life. And, he doesn't come up so favorably, but you really get to know him, and you really root for him. And it's a happy ending. I won't spoil the ending, but yeah.
What inspired you to write about a sea cucumber?
Well, I love scuba diving and snorkeling, and so I was on a snorkeling trip, and I saw all this beautiful tropical marine life on the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and I always see the sea cucumbers just rolling around in the sand, just brown and green and dull, and I thought, oh man, it would be hard to be a sea cucumber amongst all this beauty, and they can swim, the other animals and the sea cucumbers. And then this day the current was strong and the undertow just swept one away. And I was like, oh, imagine being a sea cucumber and losing your friend. And then so that was the idea for the book.
Yeah. I had an experience snorkeling down in Puerto Rico where with some family, and we're out on their boat. We're moored off a beautiful little deserted island. And I go snorkeling, and I don't do a lot of snorkeling, but I love it. And I'm not used to all you can see is just like, where you can look out through your goggles. And yeah. I'm looking at all the colorful fish and the coral and everything. And then this giant thing swam underneath me. I have no idea what it was because it scared the life out of me. And when I popped up to look where I was, I noticed I was way too far away from the boat, and I'm like, please don't eat me.
What was it?
I have no idea what it was. It was just because it scared me because it wasn't there, and then all of a sudden it was there, and it just took up my entire field of vision.
Yeah, it's funny. When I'm on the surface, I'm scared of what I can't see below, like sharks. I'm scared of that. But when I go diving and I can see the sharks, I actually, not like great white sharks, just little reef sharks. I actually like to chase after them, and people pull my fin and be like, no, come back this way. But once you can see it, it's not so scary. It's the fear of the unknown that gets me.
Well, that was it. I had I have very little experience, snorkeling, especially down in the tropics, but, I like
you made it.
I did. Yeah. One of the things I'm glad my daughter learned it from me is that, all those things, you can sit back and say, well, this is going to make for a very good story someday.
Yeah.
But until that happens, I need to change my swim trunk too. So tell me, how did you get into writing books for children?
I had a bit of a light bulb moment. I've got 3 children myself, and it was when my third one was born. And I have another job, or my old job was being a sonographer, which means I do ultrasounds. So a totally different kind of job. And I still do that very part-time now. But yeah, light bulb moment. I was reading picture books because my eldest was 6 and I love picture books. And I thought, I think I'd like to do this. And it was just like, bing. And I learnt all about how to write and started practicing. And then I just fell in love with it. And now I write picture books all the time. You know, I can't believe there was a time where I never did it. So you never know what's around the corner in life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how many books on your website? It looks a dozen or so?
I've got 8 published so far in Australia, and Neil, the Amazing Sea Cucumber, is going to be my first in the US. Yeah, so I've had a couple come out in other countries like France and Thailand, but yeah, otherwise just Australia and New Zealand. Yeah. And my 9th one comes out next year in Australia. So hopefully that one will make it to the US too.
Yeah. What's that like, sitting back and knowing that your book is touching kids all around the world?
Yeah, it's so cool. It's one of the coolest things about writing, that when you put a book out into the world, you don't know who's going to read it. And when you get the good news from your publisher that it's coming out in another country, it might be translated even. It's like, wow. One, you get paid for doing absolutely no work, which is really good because you already wrote the book and they don't even ask you to like translate it or check it or anything. They just pay you. And then, yeah, you get to know that it's reaching more and more kids, and that's really exciting.
Yeah. You know, my beautiful wife and I attended the International Children's Book Festival in Bologna, Italy. And for those of you who don't know, that's what that book festival isn't for kids. It's all about publishers going over and selling their IP to different parts of the world. And I was blown away at how big the children's book industry is, that this thing filled 5 huge convention halls.
Oh, wow. I've heard about it. I've known people that have gone, and I would love to go one day. It looks amazing. It
really is. The event itself is amazing. I know Neil is published by Penguin Random House here in the States, and we have lots and lots of guests from Penguin on the show. So, I went and found their booth, and I thought maybe I'll meet one of the publicists, in real life that I work with. The Penguin booth was about as big as a New York City block. It was, it was incredible. And there had to have been 200 people there from Penguin, you know, checking out the different IP. And, wow. And Bologna is such a beautiful city. There's like, literally a cathedral on every corner.
Yeah, I've been to Bologna before. My background is Italian, so I visited Italy, but not when it was before I was a writer and I didn't know anything about the festival. It could have been on and I wouldn't have known. But yeah, it's gorgeous. And yeah, I think Penguin I think they're the largest publisher in the world. So
they are, yeah.
But it sounds great because you can see all the different picture books from around the world, and picture books are different, like European picture books are quite different to US ones. I'm writing in Australia, so Neil is a different book even for Australia. So it'll be hopefully super interesting for American readers because it's something a bit different.
We've talked a lot about the differences in books that are published, written for different audiences. I know that we had a series in Spanish talking about the books from Latin America and how they differed, and they're much more realistic than the books that are published here in the United States. What about in Australia? How do you perceive the difference of books written for an Australian audience as opposed to those written originally for an American audience?
I think Australian books, well, I think we have maybe a little bit more freedom. We can be a little bit cheekier, or we can touch on issues that might be considered, we'll steer clear of that in the US maybe. So a bit of a broader range, perhaps. Hard to say because, people are doing different books everywhere. But, we have like a different stable of illustrators. So books can look different visually, whether they're European, American, Australian. This illustrator is Australian as well, Lucinda Gifford, who illustrated Neil. just so hilarious. Like I think I really love funny books, so I was really pleased to have her do it and us both be Australian. Yeah, so I think this one's different because it kind of reads like a graphic novel. It's all told in dialogue and it's in picture book size and format, and the page numbers and the text is very limited. But yeah, it's kind of like a graphic novel in a picture book format. So like a comic almost. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm curious. You said that when that light bulb went off for you, your eldest child was 6. I imagine they're a little bit older now, but how do they feel about having a mom who's writing picture books for kids all over the world?
They love it. Yeah, it's been great. As they've grown up, just to see me reading and writing, and then they get out their little books, and they had like cardboard laptops and copied me, and it was really fun to read them my stories and take them to all the book launches, because I'm friends with loads of authors, so I was always taking them to book launches and book events and things like that, and it's fantastic. Yeah, I think picture books are so great for kids and parents and teachers and everyone, so it was really nice to have that as a big part of our lives. And they're all really strong readers and writers now themselves. That they're I've got 2 teenagers and an 11-year-old now. So
Great.
yeah.
That's. Have you thought about writing for any older audiences, maybe middle grade or YA?
I think, yeah, I'm writing chapter book series and graphic novel series too, so I hope to publish those one day. I don't think I'd write for older than 12. I feel like my wheelhouse is younger kids. But yeah, I think visually, so like this book has a lot of the storytelling and the humour told in the illustrations. So it feels natural to me to write graphic novels as well and illustrated chapter books. Yeah.
Did it take you a while to learn how to write in a way that you left room for the illustrator to tell part of the story?
No, I think I just did that from the get-go. I liked books that use the illustrations or juxtapose the text with the illustrations, or, you know, there are a lot of narrative jumps in the text. Like a lot of my text wouldn't make sense if you read it by itself without the pictures, because I just naturally use the pictures to tell. So, you know, I think that part came easily to me. And that's one of the big draw cards of picture books, that they lean so heavily on the illustrations. And work together with them to tell a story, because they're really an audio-visual medium, aren't they? They're read aloud a lot of the time, so they're a cool thing unto themselves.
Yeah. I'm curious. I was really surprised to learn that here in the States, anyways, traditionally published books, publishers like to keep a firewall between the illustrator and the author, and there's very little communication directly, if any at all, and it usually goes through an art director. Does that hold true for Australia as well?
Yeah, we're the same. Yeah, I think all authors all around the world must just be too bossy or something. Keep us away from all the illustrators all over the world.
I'm curious, what were you like as a kid? What kind of books did you like to read, or did you like to read when you were a kid?
I did. I was a bit of a tomboy when I was a kid. I liked funny books a lot. My favorite book was a little golden book called The Monster at the End of This Book with Grover. I think it was published in 1976. And Grover was the monster at the end of this book, spoiler alert. And it was so hilarious that it broke the fourth wall. It was so ingenious. I love that book, and I have great memories reading with my mum in particular about picture books, and I think that's part of why I like to write as well, to try to recreate or offer that sort of bonding experience. I don't just write for kids. You know, some people say you must write for only children, their picture books. I actually write for the big person and the kid, because I think if the adult is having a good time, whether it's humor or whatever's engaging them, the kid picks up on that, and then everybody has a great time, and the whole thing becomes this really nice experience for the kid and the adult too. So yeah, that's my take on picture books. It's fed by my childhood memories, I think, of having fun and with my mum.
Yeah. You know, one of the things we love to do is encourage families to read books differently. You know, you always hear about the parent, I got to read that book again. 500 times I've had to read that book. And you don't have to read it the same way every time. What would you suggest if a parent was reading this book to their kid and we wanted we wanted to imagine that either the parent or the kid was in the water with Neil. What do you think
that's
it look like?
well, I think because this book's told all in dialogue, so it's mainly Neil talking. So you get to do a really funny, boring voice, which can be really fun, like to take on Neil. And so every time you read it, you can try delivering the text in a different way. So the parent gets to be like an actor or, you know, a drama student or something and have fun with it. You can do it in different accents. It's funny, there's a funny UK series called The Young Ones, and I didn't realize that Neil was the voice of the Neil character in this show. It's not a kid's show, it's an adult show, but he was this sort of like really down, sort of depressed guy. And I realized after I finished writing the book, oh, Neil has the voice of Neil from that TV show, which I watched when I was a kid. So it's fun to do it like that, or just mess around with it, with the delivery. Absolutely. I love using dialogue for that reason, for read alouds.
Yeah. You know, my kids, they're now grown and married, but I had so much fun with them, with the different voices. And I drove them crazy sometimes because we'd read the same story, but I'd use a different voice. And my daughter would go, no, not that voice. Do the voice you did the other night. And I wouldn't remember what voices I did the other night. So it was like,
I'm through them all. Yeah. So when I visit schools, it's fun to get kids up. They're like, who wants to read Neil? And we'll go like in a round and they all have to do their different boring delivery. But it was a fun book to write because it's actually hard to write a book about a boring character without the book being boring. So yeah, it was a real challenge to get that subtle, really deadpan humor in there where he's just constantly deadpan and flat delivery. But yeah, it was really fun to read, or to write. I hope it's fun to read.
Yeah. When you started writing Neil, was there a point when you said, oh my, this guy is so boring. I don't know if I want to finish writing this.
No, I think that was the draw card for me. Like, I thought, what a different character. One, I have never seen a sea cucumber as a character anywhere. So it's about time to shine a light on the sea cucumbers. And then two, it would be so funny if he was just as boring, like he's like a pickle that's been tossed on the ocean floor. And I thought, what an interesting character. I wonder if I can write a story about how boring he is and what fun I could have with that.
Yeah. I'm curious. I was on your website and I saw that you wrote a book called Who is Zed? I think
Who Fed Zed? Yeah, Who Fed Zed?
Who Fed Zed? And of course, with a name like Jed, I gotta know who fed Zed.
You know, Jed is in that story. So there's Ned, Fred, Zed, Jed. Yeah, so you're in it.
I made it.
Yeah, Jed. Yeah. There's a dog in there. There's a goldfish called Zed, and there's a bunch of characters. And yeah, that's a funny one. That's actually a mono rhyme. So every single line of that book rhymes with the word Zed. The entire story. Yeah.
Wait a minute. There's no the or t.
Not at the end of every single line.
Okay.
It rhymes. Yeah. So it's like, what's the line? I can't remember it. I'm friends with Ned and Ted and Fred. We like to play with Ted's dog, Jed, but Jed has fleas. He's in the shed. Today we watch Fred's dishes.
Oh my.
So you get relegated to the shed with fleas, Jed. Sorry.
No worries. I've been there before. My beautiful wife can only put up with so much of me. Tell me, what's the work in progress? Or can you tell me about your work in progress?
More picture books, a lot of them rhyming, some of them not rhyming. My one out next year is about cards, and that's a really cool book. That's got a rhyme scheme I've never seen before in any picture book. So I'm keen to hear what people think about that one. And yeah, more picture books, and I'm getting some progress down on my graphic novel series slowly.
Excellent. Well, you have an open invitation to come back next year for that the new book with the new rhyme scheme, and you can tell us all about that.
Talk about cars, yeah.
There you go. Let's talk about where we can go to find out more about Neil and more about you and Zed and Jed and with fleas and all that other great stuff.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be in all the bookshops. So yeah, I hope you guys like Neil the Amazing Sea Cucumber.
Yeah. And do you have a website that people can check out?
Yes, ameliatonta.com.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Neil, the Amazing Sea Cucumber. I can imagine a ringmaster introducing that at a circus. Our guest today has been the author, Amelia Tonta. Hey, Amelia, thanks so much for giving us a preview of tomorrow and telling us all about Neil.
Thanks for having me, Jed. Have a nice day today.
Tomorrow. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. Will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please share our link to the show with someone you love. Leave a 5-star review and, of course, subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. We would love it if you connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on X, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids, our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guests, Angie Kang and Julie Leung. Please be sure to check out Navigating Night. We also want to thank Amelia Tonta. Please be sure to check out Neil, the Amazing Sea Cucumber. I want to thank my team, Chris Doherty, Jackson Saltalera. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support and love she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so very much for joining us. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.